In the last video we went over how necromancers in Skyrim, or pretty much most settings, are not really that similar as a social group to the real world drug dealers. What we didn't go over is to whom they are actually similar to. Going about this will require us to narrow the focus specifically to the universe of the Elder Scrolls, because it has some neat quirks that are of importance here. And just a heads up, this is not a meticulous investigation into game files or scrapped lore ideas, like the great Camelworks video on the Ogre of Dunlane. Go watch it if you are into that sort of stuff, it's worth it. I will headcanon some significant parts of this analysis, so don't go at me if you disagree, or think that what I'm saying has some lore holes or something. I'm just having some fun here. Okay, the first thing that is weird about specifically Skyrim Necromancy is that it is legal in theory, but severely punished socially, which causes most conjurers, which would technically encompass both necromancers and Skyrim's take on demonologists, to live and practice magic in seclusion. But practice magic for what useful purpose exactly? I can understand Finnish Jester, Thalion, or any other well-off and established conjurers. They are chasing curiosity or ambition, and have the means to secure their existence while doing so. But if Finnish can summon the dead in peace at the College of Winterhold, why aren't necromancers flocking there in large numbers? Probably most of them would not become near as prominent as him, but at least they could live semi-legally in a comfortable institution. Why did they choose to live in squalor and danger somewhere in the wood? It is never really explored in depth in-game. Skyrim suggests mages are fairly rare, but their actual numbers are still much too big for either the size of the college, or the commonplace ignorance of magic professed by many NPCs. I can assume this is for gameplay reasons, but given that the TES universe is not as devoid of commonplace magic as, for example, the Witcher universe, I think there must be some social outlet for people who have below average amount of magical talent, but still decide to make their living that way. In short, where are all the crappy mages at? They can't all begin with a dungeon and a set of spells memorized. Shouldn't there be cheap mages you can hire who will use magic to quickly accomplish menial tasks like cooking food or clearing rocks in a mine? We know from playing the College of Winterhold questline that the college is not letting just anyone in without a test of magical aptitude, with admittedly a very low bar of entry. Officially, this is to guard the college from any potential trouble from the non-magical locals. The Archmage is also pretty clear on his policy of not aggravating the Nords in any way.
Some risks must be taken, to be sure. I am simply trying to avoid untimely deaths. We also must make an effort to avoid worsening what Skyrim thinks of us.
Finnish also expresses the sentiment, referencing it specifically towards conjurers.
Necromancy, as any other type of magic, is a tool to be used. Of course, non-mages may not see it that way, so we don't go around flaunting it. Not within society, no. Many who practice within the school of conjuration do so on their own, secretly.
And practice on living subjects is suggested to be carried out outside of the college by Ephir.
Even with the college's laid-back attitude, there are still some things that are off limits. There are some experiments the college frowns on, if they're aware of them, of course. Purposely killing your fellow college members is a bad idea. I'd advise against it. Theft and assault can get you into trouble as well. As for research, well, a sufficient explanation will cover almost anything. If you're going to need live test subjects for your experiments, it's easier to do that off of college grounds.
But how can a mage NPC realistically train magic if they are denied from the college and not rich enough to hire a tutor? This leaves them with only one valid option to learn magic, that is, on their own. Which, even if not dangerous in itself, the player character never has any problems with spells backfiring, would probably not be very desirable in the eyes of the locals, hence the need to hide somewhere in the wilderness. So, on the face of it, we could simply explain the abundance of necromancers in the woods and the emptiness of the college with the fact that middling conjurers are not deemed as worth the trouble by the college. So they either give up on magic altogether or flock into the woods and dungeons to either find some tutor or learn the magic themselves. Well, that may have worked pretty well before the Civil War, but now, with the abundance of dead bodies and the divided attention of the Jarls, the necromancers and affiliated mages became arguably the most common representatives of the magical profession, creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. The conjurers are not admitted because they are deemed problematic, so they spread out across the province, actually becoming the problem that later keeps them and their ilk out of the college, for the fear of being associated with the troublemakers. So this checks out. If people are kept from legitimate lifestyle choices, they will often be forced to take up questionable or illegal ones. But why do they need to be conjurers? Aren't distraction or illusion mages equally as probable to be seen as an issue among normal people? And both these schools of magic seem to be more immediately useful than conjuring, which at first allows you to summon only the most pathetic of creatures, if even that. If you are not some kind of a savant, how are you going to quickly earn an income with your pathetic adept level spells without risking your life? Why learn the most taboo school of magic with the steepest learning curve and the lowest immediate returns in terms of power? Is it the cliché promise of immortality thing that we went over in the previous video? In my view, Skyrim's necromancy most often begins not as a calling, but as a side hustle. Let me explain. In this setting, the line of what exactly is necromancy can be a bit blurry. Enchanting, which imbues items and weapons with magical powers, uses soul gems to facilitate the process of enchanting. Soul trapping, which is used to fill the soul gems, is technically a necromantic spell, directly manipulating the souls of a dead being. Galerion, a virulently anti-necromancy mage who founded the original Mages Guild, links the past spread of soul gems to the machinations of Mannimarco, arguably the most notorious necromancer of all time. I will link the whole text of his guild memo on soul trapping in the description. But in short, he views the ubiquitous presence of soul gems as a plot to make necromantic arts more mainstream. If we consider ESO canon and we agree with Galerion's take on soul gems, we can arguably say that the plan succeeded. By the late Third Era, soul gems are everywhere, from automatic defenses to essentially batteries for magical helmets and weapons. But maybe just teaching every mage a little bit about technically sorta necromancy as a curiosity was not Mannimarco's whole point, because thanks to him, large groups of mages became able to safely earn a living with magic. Just learn Soul Trap and fill soul gems for a living. It's an incredibly basic spell and allows you to secure yourself a fairly normal and relatively safe job. Filled gems have a very nice profit margin, effectively tripling in price after being filled. There is a widespread demand for them, and actually filling them is not that much of a hassle at first. You just have to kill something to do it. It does not even have to be anything dangerous. You can start off by soul trapping farm animals that are going to be slaughtered anyway, if the farmer is not prejudiced about magic too much, that is. Maybe you can even do it without them noticing. However, there's simply not enough livestock to do this daily. So, logically, you will venture out into the wild, kill a bird, a skeever, a wild dog, and maybe a mud crab, trap their souls, and go back to the city. Simply rinse and repeat. To advance your craft and increase your payroll, you just need bigger gems and bigger creatures. As you're not suicidal, you may be tempted to raise the animals you just killed to help you out. It's not like anyone would buy skeever or dog meat for any useful price, although you can disembowel the creatures before raising them, effectively double dipping. Little by little, you would learn basic necromancy that way, simply by trying to eke out a living. Little by little, you would be more comfortable in the wilderness and less comfortable with people seeing what you are doing to sustain yourself. From here, we just need a little push. Maybe being discovered raising dead animals by a random hunter, maybe nearly dying after your undead rat was mushed by a troll, for you to switch from raising dead animals to raising the ample supply of well-preserved, fully equipped, frozen corpses littering the roads of war-engulfed Skyrim. With such increased protection, you will more comfortably descend to the dungeons and tombs in search of monsters, treasures, big old soul gems, or just a safe place to rest for a bit. If you happen to meet similar soul trappers, you may just form a group, similar to a group of poachers, grave robbers, moonshiners, or run-of-the-mills adventurers and vagabonds. After all, you are kinda a mix of all these groups. Thus, at least in Skyrim, necromancers are not like drug dealers. they are much more similar to poachers and grave robbers. And if they raise sentient corpses, effectively torturing the sentient souls still bound to said corpses. Also human traffickers. Okay, wait, so is that the whole conspiracy? Well, not exactly. What if the college's ambiguous practical stand on necromancy is entirely intentional? They don't publicize their support of necromantic research and keep conjurers and many low-level mages out of their school, knowing full well they will resort to necromancy sooner or later. After all, they are sending them out into the wilderness of a war-torn, inhospitable country. What are they expecting will happen to them? Obviously, many will turn to necromancy. Barring anything else, they need a source of income, fast. And which magical skill can most readily be turned into money in this economy? Soul trapping, of course. USP Wiki lists exactly 61 arcane enchanters enchanting workbenches in Skyrim, excluding player houses. Half are dispersed among monster-infested ruins, vampires, and Daedric sanctuaries, effectively cut off from the economy. Around a quarter, 15, are in possession of established mages, court wizards, and the college itself. However, exactly the same amount of arcane enchanters is in possession of bandits, necromancers, and wandering, quote-unquote, or undercover mages. This means that an entire active half of the industry is effectively in the hands of outlaws and warlocks. To use these for anything profitable, you need soul gems. And who do you think supplies who in this situation? Are soul gems being filled in the sleepy cities of Skyrim, or across the wilderness and ruins? But where does the college come in? Sergius Trianus, the master enchanter from the college, is very comfortable sending you out on missions to fill soul gems for him, so that he can use them for his clients.
In fact, there is. I need a soul gem filled, if you're up to it. Here, take this grand soul gem. Fill it for me, and bring it right back. I'll be waiting.
Not the talkative type, the only two other topics he will mention both center around the importance of enchanting to the college.
Keeping busy, Sergius?
As always, the Nords don't ever stop wanting things enchanted.
At least it's more money for the college.
Perhaps, but it just means more work for me.
He's also the only realistically available enchanting trainer in the whole of Skyrim. Therefore, most of the high-level and legitimate aspects of the enchanting industry are in the hands of either current or former members of the college, if we assume court wizards can also perform some of it. These people massively profit off of a large mass of borderline illegal cheap conjurers, supplying the market, and probably the college, with low-cost soul gems. After getting their hands on these gems, established mages use their legal and expensive high-end enchanting skills to profit off the cheap supply of raw materials they helped create with their recruitment practice. They can't outlaw the necromancy altogether, as it would hurt their profits too much, and maybe even force them to enforce this ban like the Mages Guild did in Cyrodiil, which is the last thing they want. They want these forests filled with lowlifes risking their lives for free petty soul gems, which will power the magic candlelight number 4 in the courtyard of the college for a week. What's even more tragic, my previous story of a soul trapper was fairly lighthearted, just a guy or gal scrounging a living doing glorified pest control. But war, famine and plague also bring with them less comfortable avenues for learning necromancy. From people losing loved ones and desperately trying to communicate with them, through terminally ill plague victims with nothing else to lose, to dramatized battle mages huddling in a cave, with a group of their reanimated brothers-in-arms. This more sympathetic depiction of necromantic backstories would be rather too depressing for a cannon-fodder enemy you mow down in droves in multiple quest chains. But on the other hand, it would be pretty neat to join the low-life version of a Mages Guild, a kind of a cross between the Thieves Guild, the Brotherhood, and the College of Winterhold questlines, where you would start off by killing and raising rats in someone's cellar, then creating really sketchy enchanted items for shady people, to waiting until a skirmish between the Empire and the Stormcloaks ends, so that you can raise their dead and use them to storm the drogue-infested ruin to establish a new guild headquarters. Oh well.
Like that's ever gonna happen. Some